Welcome back to another Sci-Fi episode where psychology and finances intersect. I still have my buddy Emily Baggett, attorney with Redstone Arsenal, and we're going to continue to examine how we think, feel, and behave with our digital assets, and how we are going to plan our estate surrounding digital assets. And with this being a podcast relating to psychology and how the world of psychology impacts what we do with our finances, one of the things that Emily and I have both seen in practice is individuals who believe that they have more time than they actually do. So many times the financial planning, the estate planning, and all the other planning that we know we need to tackle, we tend to put off, we tend to procrastinate. And I hope by the time this series of digital assets and estate planning is complete, that you'll have the what's in it for me to actually go through with this. And Emily, one of the things we were just talking about are those digital assets that a lot of folks don't even think about when it comes to a digital asset. You and I share a similar love for Legos. And again, no Army endorsement implied, but let's talk about Lego rewards. It's something that is there in your digital asset portfolio, but what do you do with something like that?
Right. And with the Lego rewards, that's something else. It's another rewards component that you might have that you could use that, again, at the end, say, I have the example I used when I spoke at the financial symposium is I had at that time $111 in my Lego rewards account. Well, since I had that much in my Lego rewards account, I was saving up for something. I was able to use them, but that's, again, if you have something like that, if something would have happened to me, that's a pretty sizable amount for the Lego world. I mean, that could have been used, that someone could have used. So you have to think about those things that, could someone have used them? Yes, they could have logged into my account and bought something from the website.
And really, it's not just about the money, is it? Because let's say that you and your child both enjoy doing this as an activity together for quality time. And you pass, the child knows that you have something that is available to you. And this is another continued source of connection when it comes to having this ability beyond the grave to finish a project with you or to create a new project with you. So really getting behind the financial aspect and the psychological aspect tied to that. But we also don't think about the other online accounts. So email accounts, storage accounts, gaming accounts, professional licenses. You and I have to maintain our licenses throughout the years. And what are some of the things that we might need to cinch up there? But talk about some of those online accounts that maybe you've had some personal experience with.
So one of the things you did mention is we're both professionals. So I do have to say again that the disclaimer that states that the views presented, mine or the speaker, and do not necessarily represent the views of the DOD, my official disclaimer as an attorney. But one of the articles recently, when you're talking about some type of professional license, is for doctors. They have to have usernames and passwords, potentially, I guess, to get into their medical records or for, looking at records at their system. If a doctor passes away, their practice might have owned the records, but the doctor is the one who has to have access to those records as far as managing those client records. Then how does the practice necessarily get into the records, or how does someone else maintain those records? So that is from a different kind of online, and I know that's kind of a business kind of standpoint as well, but I'm not in private practice anymore, so I don't have to log into a client system, but thinking about that, if you log into some type of client system where you've got to log into clients, you have a clients. I've had folks before that do have client-based systems because they're consulting or they have a consulting business. Like, if something happens, are you going to be able to get into those client files? Does somebody need to be able to get into those client files? Email accounts are the same way. I tell clients a lot of times, maybe somebody doesn't know a username and password, but we know a lot of times you can reset some of those things if you have the correct email, because you can reset with an email account, reset a password a lot of times. So I always say, know what those email accounts are. I don't game. I'm not a gamer, but from what I understand, gaming accounts can be potentially quite lucrative if you own some of these gaming accounts or something to do with some of these gaming things. Again, I don't understand some of the gaming concepts, but if you're in the gaming world, you want to have access to those.
Right. And now we get into creative content. And when you ask the question in the Financial Symposium, how many of you are influencers? We didn't have anyone raise their hand, and one of my colleagues actually got on to me later for not raising my hand, but I don't view myself as an influencer. I just am passionate about giving psychology away, giving financial education away, and this is just a little grassroots effort in another platform to provide on-demand financial education. But we had a conversation just a little bit ago about how sometimes we fall backwards into an influencer role. And some of us don't even realize that. So with creative content, it could be through a blog, it could be through a podcast. And I'll give a personal example. My daughter had this beautiful podcast, and she was only 15 when she started it, and it was wonderful. I couldn't wait for the next episode to come out. She did it weekly, and she would record during the week, which was also school happening, and it was great. She had several followers. She got lots of compliments at school and in other community settings, and all of a sudden she felt so pressured and so stressed out by this podcast that she just wanted to leave it. And she closed it all down before Mama Bear had a chance to download at least one episode to save for future reference, like when I'm old and gray and I just want to sit there and reminisce about my baby girl and how beautiful of a podcast that was. And so I wasn't upset with her, obviously, but if I would have known about this before she decided to shut it all down, I would have gently asked for the Instagram password, the ability to go in there. Now, what teenage daughter is going to want to give mom and dad their Instagram password and that type of thing? But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could have been to wherever she was housing the videos to pull, which was actually from her phone. And so she deleted everything because she was just so upset. It was an impulsive act. And again, that's what a 15-year-old, 16-year-old brain does. I'm done with it. I'm washing my hands of it, and it's time to just get rid of it all. But again, as a mom, I would have loved to at least saved one of the episodes for future reference. So that may not necessarily be what people are considering a digital asset, but we think of our pictures that way, right? We think of photos that are digital in nature, but so why not videos? Why not those other things that may not have monetary value, but they have a lot of sentimental value?
Exactly, because you talk about videos. I have a video of me and my son from when he's probably 7 or 8, and it's one of my favorite things when I'm kind of down to go back and watch. And it was just we were singing a Taylor Swift song in the car, having the best time. And I mean, I just happened to click the video on that day and say, we're in a music video, let's, jam it up. And I mean, it's less than a minute, I think, but it's saved on my phone. I've saved it to like my Google Drive, but that's one of those things that I go back and watch all the time. My son's now 16. So, you have those like sentimental things that you do want to keep. And he probably would be like, Mom, I can't believe, don't you ever show that to anyone. But it's one of those things as a mom you want. I think about some of the stories my grandmother told that we recorded, and we're so glad we recorded those because you want those things. They're family history that you're not going to remember. You think you're going to remember some of the things and the way the story is supposed to go, but then when everybody sits down, nobody remembers how really it goes because everybody's thinks it goes one way and it's really not. So then it's like, well, thank goodness we did record it. But where are those memories? I really love those memories. I recently found out that on my mom's side, there's a family cemetery. There is a website where they keep all of the information on the family cemetery. I did not know this. My mom said, yeah, there's there's a cemetery that you log in and there's all the information on how everything goes. And I thought, there's a lot of family information on that website. And she's like, yeah, it goes back. And she started telling, it goes way back. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. People have things like that you don't think about in your photos. It might not be stored digitally. Where are your photos stored? Dare to say how many USBs are in this little Ziploc bag at my house. But, do you walk around like me with this baggie of Ziploc bags of I don't know, but don't touch those. Those are the photos, the child's photos. All through his life, they're in that that baggie of the USBs. Because one day, I will get around to organizing them, I'm sure. But I just know I don't want them touched. So do you have any of those USB baggies? Or do you have them on a hard drive? Those are considered digital assets as well. Where are those? Where are you storing them?
Well, you heard it here. Even the attorney hasn't had time to get around to a couple things. So maybe we don't need to feel as guilty as we are. But there are some digital platforms that have become monetized. I really do believe had my daughter continued with the podcast, she could have made some money on what she was doing. I was very impressed with how eloquent of a speaker she has become and the research that she would put into every episode. And I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But if she had become monetized, Emily, what would have been the appropriate manner to receive the monetary benefits?
I think when you actually do start earning money from, say she put her podcast, let's say, on YouTube. There are so many people that do have YouTube videos that maybe they don't start out, or say they do start a podcast. Then they do start, to where they talk about it on YouTube and they do start earning some money off that. Then you do have to realize that if there's money coming in off that, then you have to think about, well, how is that going to go into the estate plan? There is a particular, let's take this for example. Say you have a dog, and I know we all love our pets. I have one that I love very much, even though sometimes I wonder about him. But anyway, he's a puppy, but an 80-pound puppy. But anyway, so you have a pet. Your pet becomes famous on Instagram because you put pet videos on there, which this can happen, okay? As much as we love our pets, at the end of the day, they're property. So your pet's property, but you're making money off your pet. But this pet has become very famous as this Instagram star, and you got brand deals for the pet. So because he gets all kinds of stuff, which ultimately you do. So you have to think about those things. That's got to become part of your estate plan. Do you need then someone, obviously it's going to go in your will, but at the same time, this is another component of estate planning. Do you need a digital executor? And what I mean by that, do you need someone that's got to handle the online component only, potentially? And that is now becoming the kind of next wave as far as some of the digital stuff, as far as folks that do have a lot of online content for the, what I would say, influencers. Obviously, some of our famous folks of the world, I'm sure they do have folks that are going to be digital executors, because you've got to know how to get to some of these websites, how to make sure that their image is not being, or their likeness is not being used in an improper manner, all those different things. And that is where you have to think about those things as well. I know we talk about it on a smaller scale, but that's where you have to think on a larger scale. What if you do have you do get to a larger scale where you're looking at, okay, you have an Instagram, you've got a YouTube, you've got brand deals. I mean, it might be something beyond what you want to leave to, say, your child to figure out, or say, I think of these wonderful people that can cook, that have maybe a cookbook, or they've started a little cooking show or whatever. There's all kinds of things that you could have started out that just was a hobby that now has really come into something, a hobby that has turned into something that you're making money off of.
And in the legal world, the terminology that attorneys love to use is digital intellectual property. So this is money. This is a cash system. So let's think about maybe the recording artists who they continue to make royalties on so many downloads of their music. It's the same concept with blogs, with other, maybe even online courses. There are folks who make their careers, make their living based on creating online content, for whether it is for DoD or it's for a private company or it's for a continuing education company. This is intellectual property that could continue to bring in dividends for your family. So it's definitely worth noting for the audience, what are your family members into? What are they doing? And then I even think of the child stars. Like I think of Full House, and I think of Candace Cameron Bure, right? She has, from a kid to an adult, continued to do well with her career. But in today's world, I mean, that was our generation, but in today's generation now, it is a lot of intellectual property that is digital in nature, and it's the same concept. There could be family members where this child is the true star of the blog or the podcast or the streaming video. And I'm sure there could be some legal battles between family members if something goes awry with that child and parent. So that's just another thing to consider. And so you use the terminology digital executor. Can you tell the audience what that is and how to access a digital executor?
Well, in the same role that you have an executor that would be in charge of your will, that says the executor is the person after you pass away that handles everything for you, that person is going to be the person that handles everything digitally for you. So say you do have anything online, say you do have a domain name or with your a website, you do have anything that has to deal with, say, you're Taylor Swift, anything to deal with how you're going to be getting your money off your music because she rebought some of her albums, I think, anything with that, anything to do, like I mentioned, the likeness, making sure nobody is using your image in an improper way. All of those things, however, your official, what is your the official Instagram, if there's still going to be posts being made, how is that going to be done? All of those different things, how is that going to continue? You have to think about that. How do you want that to continue? You have to leave how is that avenue going to go for you? How do you want that to go? You know, I think of the big one, I think that honestly I still think he still goes today. I think of Elvis. You know, I mean, Elvis still lives on. I mean, some people think Elvis is still alive. But you have to think, Elvis, I mean, we're now on, you know, Priscilla managed it, then Lisa Marie, and then now we're on, her daughter is kind of managing things now. So we're now moved on generations. There's still probably going to be components of that still has to be managed digitally. So we're generations down the line, but there's still components of him that need to be managed digitally, probably. And that, when you think about that, I mean, that's in a trust now, but you have to think along those kind of lines.
So now we've gotten into immortalizing digital assets. What a great way to end this portion of this series. Make sure you stay tuned to hear the last episode on digital estate planning. If you found this helpful, please rate the pod wherever you listen.